context, process, sorry. Uh, so kind of context, process, uh, and reflection on how it went kind of thing is a really basic underlying kind of structure. Um, I think context as well, if that's, I mean, it just strikes me that one of the things that's quite important is if we're foregrounding, is part of our definition of mentoring, something to do with relationships and trusting relationships, something that kind of sketches that out in some detail, I think would be quite useful as the introduction, as part of that context, because I think that one of the interesting things that mentoring uh, leads to is how that relationship develops over time. And when we think about mentoring as a specific kind of learning, and if you compare it to collaborative learning, for example, that relationship that you have with others as part of a group, compared to that relationship you have with what is usually one other person in that mentoring process. I think that would be quite interesting to tease out. So in the context, things about how well you knew each other, those sorts of things, I think would be quite good, and how that developed over time. Yeah, so yeah, I think that's perfect as a structure.
I mean, maybe there is another structure. Maybe, Janet, you can take a look at that framework and and add or delete whatever you consider is redundant, and then we adjust it to our case studies.
Sylvia, you're telling me you mean to revise it? Uh, I can't hear you, Sylvia.
This is
can't hear you.
a proposed framework, and
Mm,
we we give it a try with our own experiences. But as you went through all this work task yourself, maybe you can take a look at the framework and see
yeah.
whether all the items that you have included
Uh,
in your article are
mm,
considered, and if not, well, make suggestions to add or to delete, or in that framework, or propose a different framework, and
mm,
we can
mm,
use our case studies to well, we use the framework with our information of our case studies, and we produce this
mm.
description, like.
Yeah, yeah, I would do that. But John, I did it just like research, just like an academic article. He knows that I wrote it just like an academic article, but John suggested another way of writing it. This is what I understood last time, right, John? So the introduction that he suggested at the beginning is completely different from what I wrote. I I started with an abstract, keywords, just like, right, John? While John suggested something else. This is what I remember.
So
So
just to make sure that
I'm ready to do whatever you want, but I think, Sylvia, what you're suggesting is completely different from what John suggested last time.
uh,
Right, John? What do you think? You
let,
read
let-
mine and you have it.
okay, let's just make sure that we're talking about the same thing at the same time. So what we're talking about is that as part of this overall article that's group generated, then we're going to have, as part of the structure of that overall article, we're going to have something that looks at the process, hello, um, of mentoring each other and the experience of that. So that's just one particular part of this overall bigger article. So what Sylvia's are suggesting, because they've come up with a basic structure for that recording and reflecting and organizing our thoughts on the mentoring each other phase, right? Which is basically, this is the context, this is the process, this is what we learned from the experience. So it's kind of that sort of structure. What Sylvia R is suggesting is, because you've already written an article about that experience, is there anything that you would like to add to that structure? Other things that appeared in your article that you think, oh, this is really important.
Okay.
Let's make sure that that's in the section we've got in the bigger article that we're calling kind of case study.
Okay.
If that's okay. For example, I suggested that at first sight, one of the important things for me in terms of the whole experience was something to do with a detailed kind of description of the relationship between the mentor and the mentee and how that developed over time. So maybe that's, for me, that's something that's important and could be usefully included. You may have some other things. For example, one of the things that Janet included in her article was the sources of data that she looked at to review the experience. So she had emails that we'd had, she had recordings of our conversation, that kind of thing. So maybe that's also part of the structure that needs to go in there. It's probably in there already, I don't know. Okay.
Great. It's another item for the framework, sources.
Perhaps, yes. Because, I think that, as Janet was saying previously, I think that adds, for this kind of article, a little bit of academic rigor, doesn't it? Or at least seems like it. Okay. So I've got a suggestion as well, Sharon. I don't know if are you extraordinarily busy at the moment, or would you be interested in taking responsibility for a smallish part of the companion, the writing of it?
Yeah, of course. If it's something I can do in terms of content.
It is something that I think I think it's a good suggestion, because I think it's something that you've done before around the community practice that looked at AI, for example. What we agreed for the companion is that it would be important to have some kind of description, reflection, sharing on our experience within the community of practice. And we thought that we would have that as an appendix, and we'll signpost that it's there, rather than kind of having it not as a main focus, but having it nonetheless something that's important, and it explains how we came to consensus and what we did, that kind of thing. So to have it as an appendix rather than in the main text. And the kinds of things that it would include, I think, would be something to do with, before we started, questions that we talked through ourselves, Sharon, about why would anybody join, and the survey that we did before we joined to gauge interest and value and benefit, those sorts of things. And any thoughts that come to mind about how the interaction started, how it was maintained, how it developed over time, that sort of thing, I think would be really interesting, as well as something basic about how did we communicate and what platforms we used, that sort of thing.
Sure. Any word count, or how long should it be?
It's your piece of string, I suppose.
Not too long. Yeah. Summarizing.
Yeah.
Okay. Sure.
Because the one of the great things that came out of your the AI book, for me, as well as of all the great things about AI, was about the particular experience of doing it as community of practice. So something that kind of picks up a little bit on that, and you might want to weave in things that that you've discovered, you believe in, from your previous investigation into how communities of practice work.
Sure.
Brilliant. Okay. All right then. So the survey then. Rabia and I had a very long chat about the survey. And you know when you have long chats about things and somebody says, well, I think the outcome was, or I think the upshot of all this was, well, it could actually just be me, my opinion. I don't know. So tell me if this isn't the upshot, Rabia. So that we should hang fire on the survey and not do it until we've had a bit more of a discussion about what it's for and how it will help. And what I think it's for is to really do two things. The first of which is to give us all an opportunity, I think, to reflect a little bit on what we've been doing together. So, have we learned things together? Sure we have. What have we done together? And secondly, that's linked to that is to use it as a way of, if you like, confirming the consensus about some of the things that we say in the companion and say in the article. So, for example, if we've been talking about a definition of mentoring, and I was reading what Sylvia was saying today about having a working definition of it. During the webinar, for example, Nelson put forward, didn't he, a definition of mentoring. We've talked about definitions not being sentences but being prototypical and talking about characteristics and stuff. So the survey, it seems to me, is an opportunity for us to say, so for you as a member of this group, which of these things best approximates how you might answer the question, what is mentoring? Okay, so I think that's one particular question that we've got on the survey. And from the answers to that, we'll be able to say with some validity in the article and the companion that this represents group thought on it. And there are other key things, it seems to me, that are to do with, for example, models and approaches, are to do with skills, are to do with challenges of mentoring that we've talked about, that have been some of our key themes throughout, and that we put quite a lot of thinking into the survey and say, for example, all right then, so of all of these key skills, all of these skills that we've talked about, which we think mentors should have in order to be effective, what's at the core of those? What skill? If you're not empathetic, don't even think about becoming a mentor, for example. Whereas, taking notes on an observation, you see what I mean? That we kind of try and distill things to very, really important key things that will fit into an article, that will be part of an executive summary of the companion, that say, that if you're, for example, if you're organizing a course in mentor training, don't forget, there's no point having that course unless you include some sort of input on X, that kind of thing. So that's what I'm suggesting that we do for the survey. Okay, so it's the thumbs up from Rabia. Will that be okay then? Or
So we wait a couple of weeks and then we have the survey. That's what you suggest, postponing it
yeah,
until we go a bit further with the writing. Is that what you mean?
that's exactly what I mean.
In the article, what I did was I looked for the references that support those definitions of mentoring that we once included in the companion. And I think I wrote a final one as a working definition, but well, we can wait until we go through the survey to come up with that final one.
Yeah, I mean that's a really good example, Sylvia, that of two things. One to do with triangulation. So we've had a look at the research around definitions of mentoring, and we've listed them, and we've discussed them, picked them out. So what we've tried to do as a group is to come together and through discussion and through negotiation and reflection, review, all those sorts of things, haven't we tried to come to some sort of consensus? So your working definition is that perfect test, isn't it? That could be included in the survey of, of what we can share with other people. This is what the research says. This is how we reflected on that and our own experiences. And this ultimately is what we decided was closest to a really useful way of enabling us to talk about what mentoring is in a way that's different from us talking about what training is or what coaching is or whatever it happens to be. And I'm suggesting that the survey fulfills that function with other aspects, other major themes that we've been talking about as well. So yeah, so to wait until we're a bit further on with the writing.
Okay, so I have highlighted that part in the article and said, let's wait until we go through the survey. And that is for the article. And in the companion, shall we do the same? Because we have some. Okay. Yes, Rabia. So I'm a bit at a loss as to the companion. Perhaps if somebody could give us some feedback on what we have been writing there.
Yeah, we talked, didn't we, last time about having somebody, a second pair of eyes, to come and have a look at what we've done so far. For me, and this is why one survey would be good for both the companion and the article. For me, the companion and the article cover the same content, just in different ways and in a different format for a different function. So the article has a section which is, what does the research say about definition of mentoring, for example? Well, so does the companion. It's just that in a peer-reviewed journal, rather than a kind of an easy to read, easily accessible companion, there's a different sort of format, different style, and different tone, different function, but pretty much the same thing in terms of content, seems to me.
I'd like to add something, if it's okay, John.
Konieczne, as my wife would say.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Okay. But with respect to the survey, once we have a survey and we're going to write an article, we have to really, the survey is very important, but we have to just to define how we're going to use the data that we're going to collect. What I mean by this, how is it going to talk about the method that usually the survey is used in a research or while writing an article in order to collect data. So since Rabia is going to change some items in the survey, So I think the survey is very important, and it might be our guide to write the article itself. Why? Because all the items are important, and we're going to discuss these items in our article. I don't know if you got the idea that I'm talking about. So when we use a survey in order to write an article, the survey that is going to be positioned in our article to collect data, all the things that we need in our article.
Okay, so what I'm suggesting that the function of the survey has, I don't think there's anything unusual in what I'm suggesting. It may not be, if you were, well, it doesn't matter. We use the survey to confirm consensus. Because what we're doing is we're standing up and we're saying in the article, this is what we think, or this is what we've discovered, that kind of thing. So the we is a fairly big group of people. So for me, what the survey does, what the answers to the survey do, is to say, yes, this is collectively more or less our working definition of mentoring. So you can see what our definition is. You can see what researchers have said that definition is, and you can compare that to your own. And the same with skills. Lots of academics have written about the kinds of skills that mentors need. We've talked about it, and of all of the things that you could have as a skill to be a mentor or an attribute, what we believe are really important as a group are these 7. That kind of thing. So we're using the survey not to, in a sense, extend our understanding, to find out new information. We're using it more to kind of confirm, right, based on what we're writing about, confirm some few things so that they are, in fact, representative of the group. So it kind of comes after, for me anyway, it kind of comes after. That's why I'm suggesting we wait. It kind of comes after, I suppose historically, traditionally, people will come up with a survey, distribute the survey, the answers will come in, and they'll code them and write and analyze them, interpret them, and write about them. What we're doing is we're saying, we think it's pretty much like this. We think this is the answer. Is that right? We think these are pretty much the key skills. Yeah, is that right? We've got something else to add there. And then we look at the answers and we think, what we thought was a key skill, actually, it's not really. People do, or we forgot to mention this because we're going to have a text box where people will be able to add stuff, but tightly focused on the key themes with some questions that really look at what we've spoken about, not general, but really specific, something like that.
Sylvia, you're on mute.
Yes, I was playing around with the idea of the companion, and I got one of the sections with that framework I had prepared, and I came up with this poster because I thought that maybe the companion could have a different format, a poster and a podcast. It was just, like an idea, and say, this is like succinct. It's briefly what we discussed in the companion, with the information in the companion. I don't know, just thinking out of the box.
Yeah, it's brilliant, and I think this idea of kind of making things multimodal, of making it accessible without, without oversimplifying stuff. Because isn't that a problem, though, that people say, these are the 3 stages of mentoring? Okay, all right. So that's it. Well, these are the 3 stages of mentoring within 25 other frameworks that talk about stages of mentoring or models of mentoring. So I think absolutely, but that throughout that we kind of make sure that all of the things. Did you say podcast?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was like playing with the possibility of also having a podcast. And I included the link, but it was just like ideas that we could add to the companion, because companion could be text, could be, well, poster, because a British Council generally includes in resources these posters with boxes and texts. And why not podcasts as well?
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
But of course we need to agree on the content because this was just a trial.
Yeah. So instead of, for example, or in addition to, or as another way of expressing this kind of, the executive summary. Executive summary is a stupid name for something that goes into a companion. But anyway, something that's short, easily accessible, that says, over the course of a year, the Howtomenta group met, talked about mentoring. This is what we think. Yeah, no, absolutely. And whether that's a poster, a podcast, or yeah, the bigger variety, the better. It's just that when you say we need to agree on the content, that's it. That's it. And the other thing, which I've said before, is that agreed content, it has to come somewhere, come from somewhere, it has to be contextualized. I'm fed up, and I'm sure everybody else is, that, people say, you know what, if you want to teach English, do these 3 things. Or, teacher education, it's about X, Y, and Z, do that and you'll be fine. Well, there's a mountain of stuff that informs all of that. So just need to, it seems to me, just need to make sure that's the ease of access, the easily accessible, all of those things, they're rooted in the bigger description, that people can see why we've said what we've said, that kind of thing. If you, Shirin and Sophie, you've got your hands up. Did you want?
Yeah, go ahead, Sylvia.
Thank you. No, just I was thinking, what will be in it for the reader, or for the someone who comes into contact with our productions. So I think there will be a lot. I mean, from what you've been saying, there will be a lot of things there. In the first place, is we were interested in a topic. That's why we came together, and we had our assumptions about the topic. And we did a lot of research, and we did trying. So we came to these conclusions as a group. So we are saving you time, dear reader, because it's not just, I mean, we did a lot of thinking on this, but at the same time, we don't think this is the final answer. So there comes the reflection questions to interact with the reader. So what of these things make sense to you? And, any format, podcast, poster, whatever. So we will be doing 2 things at a time. We will be telling them about the content and about how we functioned. So I think it's basically our contribution will be twofold in a way.
That's right. And I think that corresponds to what we were talking about the last time we met in relation to the structure of the companion. What we said is that it would be maybe expedient, easier for it to reflect our own journey. Yeah. So we said, okay, so we started off by thinking about mentoring, and then we did some mentoring. So, but what we said for the companion, and this is where the podcast or the poster or the executive summary comes in. If you're not interested in, as a reader, in following a journey, if you're not interested in, the companion's going to be, I don't know, 50 pages long or something, not interested in ploughing all through all of that, and you just want to sort of dip in and think, so what is it that what is mentoring exactly? I don't quite know what it is. I'll just find that bit and I'll read that bit. I won't do any research. I've read a working definition of it. That's fine. Thank you very much. I'll go away. So we make it easy for people, if they don't want to be accompanied on a journey, they can dip in and they can get, if they like that, they can get the answer to the question, what is mentoring, in 30 seconds, kind of thing. Yeah. So I think that, yes, that's right. It's got, it has, as with all input, I suppose, has two functions. You can either look at it in detail, understand where these thoughts come from and opinions, how they grew and all the rest of it, what they're built on, or you can just take, an easier route and get a quick answer. Sorry, Sharon, I jumped in again.
I was going to say, yeah, Graham can also provide some support on this because he's podcasting for a long time, and maybe it doesn't have to be one podcast, also a series of maybe 3 podcasts, because there is a lot you have, discussed.
I thought of one podcast per question because we have 7 or 8 questions. I remember.
Yeah. And it could be, I suggested this also, to have a British Council podcast channel for teacher educators, but it takes a long time for them to decide, but it's also possible to create our own channel. I mean, it doesn't have to be British Council. And I can ask my husband because he's been uploading things to Spotify, so he knows how it works. So there are some providers, I think you need to contact them. So you can't just upload like on other social media channels, but we can figure it out. So it could be another, angle, but I really like the idea because I also follow so many people on Spotify. They are usually short, and sometimes I share them on the round table. And it's such a great idea, Sylvia.
Okay.
So I have to leave in 5 minutes, by the way, another meeting, but I will write this cards for the community of practice. And yes, stay in touch.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think the short recording, I mean, you call it podcast or whatever, that kind of resonates a little bit with maybe the final output that we talked about, which is about developing a mentoring training course as well. That the short podcast around our main themes, really interesting and different kind of angle for learning, isn't it? That people will want that, don't they? They don't want to necessarily plough through huge books and stuff. My only point is that it's got to be coherent and deliberate and connected and informed, and not just random things, and it has to be representative of the group. It seems to me that that's the point about the community of practice. It's the sum of all of our parts and thinking and stuff. Okay, so I think we've got what the one main action point, which is to carry on. And it's I can see the companion and the article developing extremely nicely, really nicely. So come together, and we've got some questions, and we can do ask and answer questions offline. We know who's doing what. So I'm going to be in touch with Sylvia, our and I've got some suggestions about what you've written, which is fabulous and lovely. So just to expand on it, review it, that kind of thing. Rabia and I'll have another look at the survey when we meet next Wednesday, or this coming Wednesday. I think if we're okay with its function, which I think we are. Janet's going to circulate her article, be a very good read, and review that structure for the case study part of our article, of our bigger group article. And we'll keep these ideas that are coming out, like podcasts and formats and extensions and things like that. We'll keep track of those, because to some extent they'll inform, won't they, the way that we bring the content together. If we're thinking, well, okay, so this would be good. This is really important. This would be good for a short podcast. That sort of thing. Great. Are there any other main things then that we need to?
Yeah.
Now that we've agreed
I would
we're
like
going to
to
make.
know. Yeah, I would like to know. I mean, what to do next, because we can go on and on and on, but maybe we need to focus on X, Y, or Z. I mean, we started exploring things, and we did this, we did that. So it would be nice to know, well, is this okay? Is this the right road to follow? If not, well, let's take another road. And if yes, well, we can continue. I don't know. What about the rest? What do you think?
I just had an idea, not related to what you said, Sylvia, but an extension to what John was mentioning about having a mentoring course. And I was thinking that we can have our like Howtomenta YouTube channel, and we can have lives there. So two people can start with like the first live about what mentoring is, and we can invite people also. And even if not many people join at that time, it's going to be there. And when somebody comes across the second live, they'll find the previous session's recording also. So maybe having that and having it as a continuous stream. So we're meeting here, it's very private. So that would be open to public. And just like podcast, we can do podcasts there also. People record on YouTube and then take the audio only and put it on Spotify and somewhere like that. So people can see people on YouTube and then they can listen to them on other mediums also. So maybe we can have it like that also for the future.
Okay, for Sylvia's question, I think so. I think we're on the right track. I think. I think that we've been over the structure, and I think it's we've seen now the beginnings of the writings stuff, and I think we just continue, and that from that, maybe the next time we meet, we could perhaps pick on a section of the companion or part of the article, and have a look at that in more detail, and prepare for that in particular. And then it seems to me that it's quite a long process, isn't it, writing, and that don't really know exactly what it will turn out like, even though we've talked about the structure, and even though we've started. we'll go backwards and forwards. I don't think there's much point bringing somebody in right now, somebody from the group, for example, who's not been part of it. But I think there would be in a couple of weeks' time. Absolutely. And I'm also interested to see what Anne has got to say as well about case studies and how that, how we're going to, structure that reflection on the experience. What will finally emerge for that. And I think we need to, need to see a start of writing that, I think.
So we continue with our input. We continue and at some point we will get all this input and start putting it into a certain structure or whatever.
Well, it's in a certain structure at the moment.
Yes, but maybe a bigger structure.
Do you have sort of misgivings about the structure?
No,
reading between the lines.
No, I mean that I was using the questions for the companion, but I don't know if we all agree that the questions will be the framework for the companion. And I mean, I can continue using the questions.
Sylvia, will you please share the questions? Would you like to share the questions for a minute? Just
yes, I'll share
that. Thank you.
When we talked about this before,
the questions here are the questions. Thinking about mentoring, we still need the questions for doing the mentoring. And then I started using the questions, well, the framework I suggested, and my suggestion as to how to organize that section. The first question was, what is mentoring? I used all the material we had in the companion with the structure I had suggested, our working definition, why we agreed on this definition, reflection for the reader, final word. The text was generated by ChatGPT with the source that we are all sharing. Then with that information, I generated the podcast with Note GPT. And then I also generated the poster, the podcast and the post. And I continued with the structure I had suggested and the material in the companion. I can continue. I mean, it's okay, but I may want to read your comments and see whether is this useful, because maybe it is not.
Is it in the article or the companion?
This is in the companion.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll have a look. I'll have a look and share my comments.
So when we talked about this before,
Anna, I think, sorry, in my opinion, I think it's a little bit, I don't know, answering these questions a little bit. Now, if you're talking about podcasts and talking about, it's not related to the content of the article. This is what I mean.
It isn't the article, this is the companion.
Exactly, but you're talking about that these questions are going to be our guide to write the article, right?
No. This is the companion. This is the companion, and in the companion, we came up with a set of questions to structure how we're going to express,
write the article,
communicate.
Right?
No, not for the companion. So we have two documents. The article, it's okay. I think it's okay for me. I understood what I had to do. But with a companion, I can go on and on, but I wonder if this is what is expected by the whole group. This is what.
Okay. So when we spoke about this before, what we said was that these questions are very useful because they are more or less our fundamental questions, our main themes that we've talked about. And we said that the structure of the companion would follow our own chronology in that we would have two main sections. So at the time, I wondered why you started at page 20 when we'd already started 20 pages earlier. So what I would suggest, if this is okay, and please don't, I got a bit worried when you said that before that you suggested a structure, we sort of torn it down, that kind of thing. So I'm a little bit worried about being kind of overly directive in any sense. But what I think would be more useful now would be to have a look at what you've written as answers to those questions and what's missing then from the beginning of the companion, which is what I've been working on. So if you go to the beginning of the companion, you'll see what I've begun to say about who this companion is for, what our key findings were, what we agreed or what we've looked at in terms of definitions, that kind of thing. So not to continue with this with your structure, but to continue with that structure, and that so you're able to say, well, John's not made any mention of this working definition, for example. He's there's reciprocity, for example, which is something fun that's not in there. Well, where's he gone? So to do that, I would say, and there are and let me continue with that particular structure, and then everything that we've got from yourself and from other from the group in general through the survey will kind of feed that into those big main themes, which are really, what is it? What kind of skills do you need? What models and approaches are out there? And what are the challenges? Yeah. So there are big sort of 4 or 5 key questions, I think.
Great.
Was that
Very
overly? Is that okay? Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. Great. Okay, and then so for the next time we meet, then let us do that. Then let's take and prepare specifically a section of the companion or a piece of the companion, a piece of the article, and say, all right then, toe, it's okay. Anything missing from the content? Could we express this and have a close look at it, and that will help, won't it? I think, to cement how we do the rest of both pieces. As a suggestion then, let us look at the forward to the companion. So the forward sets out what this publication is for, who it's for, how it will be useful, how it came into being, that kind of thing. There's some things that are missing from that. And let's take the executive summary, called it, could be a poster, could be a pocket, could be anything, and say, all right then, so at the end of these 6 months thinking about everything, are we close to having something interesting to say about the art of mentoring? Yeah, we did a webinar, didn't we? We felt we had something interesting to do a webinar about. But we got something interesting in there. address those sort of fundamental questions. And then, so maybe those two sections of the companion, and then maybe from the article, do you want to have a look at the bit that you did, Sylvia, on Sylvia? Oh, Sylvia. What?
The article, it was the first part, the research, what research says, and then we tried this framework out with our own experiences with Jerusa, our mentee Jerusa, and I used the framework without the source item, which we will have to see too, with Nelson as my mentor. But I mean, it was just to try the framework out to see if that those items help understand our mentoring each other experiences.
Okay.
I was going to ask precisely that. Please have a look at that and a critical look at that and see if that also applies to your own experience in the peer mentoring, if that would be useful, or if we would like to use a different kind of structure so that at least we can start shaping our that part of the article, and it starts making sense. And also if there's going to be an expected number of words, because it was very, very, very difficult for us with Sylvia to summarize that, all the things that we had and the recordings and everything. And we were wondering if something more sketchy would really capture the message that we wanted to send. So we need you to look at that and see if you really get that essence that we wanted to share.
Okay then. So that makes perfect sense, doesn't it? And that brings us back to Sylvia R's request of Janet to look specifically at that particular section in light of our own article and see what else was. Okay then. So just to summarize then, if we have some framed questions that will help us to actually go through the process of review then. So for the forward, all right, the question, it seems to me, is a really fundamental one. So does it explain who this book is for and what it's about? So something very simple, like who it's for and what it includes. For the executive summary, the question might be, okay then, so, do we have something more or less agreed, more or less substantial, more or less interesting about mentoring? Our main themes that we've looked at, are they interesting? Is that list of main themes, is it comprehensive? Are things that we've overlooked and we need to, so that in terms of what actually goes into the companion, its content, interesting, relevant, exhaustive, that kind of thing. Not, the tone of it or anything, but is it really have we got something interesting to say in terms of content? And for the article then, it sounds like there are two questions that you've got there, which is something to do with, does this structure facilitate reading? Something like that, is it? Does this structure will help the reader to get through the information? And secondly, is it, within, if the overall article is something like 4,500 words, is there a way of, is the way that we've approached it concise enough? Is that it?
Sorry, you mentioned 1,000 words?
4,500, something like that, for a peer-reviewed
yeah.
article.
Because mine is 3,500, so
Yeah, that's something like 4,500. Are those your two questions? Yes? No?
I think 4,500, not enough, right, Sylvia?
Yeah, why not? It's
4,500, yeah. Mine is 3,500, and I wrote only about John and I.
John.
well, that's why.
John
But
and me.
but John had
Yeah.
said that then we can write articles about our case studies. Yeah.
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 Oh, John and
But
me,
maybe you had a lot to say about John and you, Janet. Whereas Sylvia, Jerusa, and I had less to say. I don't know. No, but we really found it very, very hard to shrink it. Yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Okay then. So we'll do some work in between. We'll put some comments and stuff with on those three sections with those 3 or 4 questions as a frame, and then we'll have them. We'll have the comments and the sections on the screen. We'll explain what the comments are, kind of thing, and we'll say yes, no, great, let's do that, let's change that, let's make this shorter. No, you've forgotten about that, that kind of thing, and actually have really sort of good focus on getting, getting close to what we'd be happy to put in the public domain. Okay, all right then.
Great.
Shall I get back to my wall?
Yes, that's a good idea. What time is it there, John?
It's 14:03. 3 minutes
Okay.
past
You
2.
still have
Yeah.
time to continue with your work.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
I may be exhausted at the end of it, but I've still got time. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah. It's daylight. Okay.
Okay.
Well,
Okay, and we're meeting again in 2 weeks, yeah?
all right.
Okay.
Yeah, so that must be the 24th of
Yes.
Yeah. 24th.
24th of April, all being well.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care. Have a good Friday. Have a good weekend when it
Bye-bye.
comes.
Same to
Take
you.
care. Bye-bye.